Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Tricia Zunker in Wisconsin on Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Demcast Podcast Network.
Are you listening?
Hi everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I'm on today with Tricia Zunker, who is running for Congress this year in the Wisconsin 7th District and is a returning guest on Two Broads. So hi Tricia.
Hi Kelly.
So I am thrilled to talk to you again. We talked to you back in the spring. You were running in the special election for this seat, which was always going to be a big lift. But you did manage to move the district left. And now you're running again in this general election. So tell me a little bit about the state of the race and what's going on here with the general election.
Well, you're right. We did move the needle over 6 points against 4 times the money in unprecedented circumstances. Took a few days off and jumped right back in to finish the job on November 3rd. As you know, we continue to be in a pandemic. And all of the things that I was talking about on the campaign trail when I was getting out in this 26 county congressional district kind of have taken a back seat because we are still, 8+ months into this avoidable pandemic because of the total failure of leadership from the White House. But I do have to say it has also magnified some of the issues that were underlying now that we are in this pandemic as long as we are. I'm school board president for one of the largest school districts here in Wisconsin, and starting the year virtually has been a very polarizing issue in the community. And some of it is people do want their children back with teachers, but I think a large part of that too is the childcare issue. And that's something that I saw when I was getting out in the district. Because this is 1/3 of the state and extremely rural, there are caretaker deserts in Wisconsin 7 and quite frankly throughout the country. And so I think that that's been magnified. And one thing that we really need to do is value our caretakers for the incredible work that they do. I mean, they take care of our children, our elderly, our disabled loved ones. Why aren't we valuing them with a living wage and benefits so that they have reliable work and we have reliable caretakers? So that's one thing that's really come up. Another big issue here is broadband. And we saw this in Wisconsin when we had to go to mandated virtual learning. But again, for families that are struggling with internet access during virtual learning, and at least in the district where I'm at, we've created hubs for students to come in and use that internet. But I mean, it is high time that we treat internet like the utility that it is. One thing that I think is so critical is making sure that people have opportunity. I come from humble beginnings myself, but there were opportunities that presented themselves in my lifetime, and I seized on them. And I know what a difference it's made for me. And I think that's one of the roles of a representative is to ensure opportunity for your constituents. And without good working internet that's affordable, high speed, good quality, people are being deprived of opportunity. Teachers, students, our farmers, they don't just do their work in the fields or the barns. They need to come in and conduct their business. Small business owners, everybody really. So that's something that I think has been highlighted. Another thing, of course, healthcare, ensuring that people have affordable, accessible healthcare and that people with pre-existing conditions stay protected. Somebody recovers from coronavirus, they're going to be deemed to have a pre-existing condition and they could take all the safety precautions. It's just unfair. And the fourth and final thing that I think has really been highlighted is the need to have people in powerful decision-making positions listening to the experts, listening to the science, looking at data as a source of decision-making. Whether we're talking about addressing this climate emergency with the urgency that it requires or addressing COVID-19 and getting through and past this pandemic, we need to be listening to the experts. So I'd like to say that, we could talk about all these other issues that got me in the race in the first place, but we really need to get through COVID-19. And I didn't even talk about, quite frankly, just briefly, what we need to do at the first level. The fact that we don't have enough PPE for frontline workers this far in, not enough testing. We know how critical it is to have enough testing to get this virus under control. We don't have hazard pay for our essential workers. We need to extend unemployment benefits for those who have lost their jobs due to this pandemic. We need to have support for our family farmers and our small business owners. And I think we just need to do more educating. There are people that just don't want to believe it. I don't know. Maybe the media needs to report more on how horrible the death is. I don't mean to, sound morbid here, but, people, the death is terrible. People die alone on a ventilator. And maybe if people think about that a little more, they might take some more safety precautions.
Yes, and, having a president who's downplaying it is certainly not helping. Speaking of people downplaying it, Wisconsin, is in the beginning of another spike. Certainly, the numbers are going up for COVID, and your opponent is doing in-person unmasked events. Are you still planning to go ahead with, I know you have some scheduled debates with him.
Yeah, I saw that. I was alerted actually to some tweets yesterday for some campaign event that he was doing. And I saw and I was alarmed. It was an indoor event, no masks, no clear social distancing. And it was alarming just to see that, first of all, because leaders set examples, right? And that's not the example that we need to be setting. But our first debate is next week. And so we're within that 14-day window. And I have to think about, what would I come home to? My family, my son, who he's exposed to. I have to think about the other people in the room. What are the camera crew, the moderator, my staff that would be with me. And so that was a very serious concern. And actually, I called myself. I didn't even have my staff do it. First thing this morning, called the news station to see what we could do. And I asked for plexiglass, unless I need to bring my own divider. But actually, they called me back. They said they were able to figure something out, and they're going to do that. And so we have 2 more debates. And since I don't expect that my opponent will discontinue his current practices, we're going to try to get that plexiglass in those other 2 debates as well. Because I do think it's important for the voters to be able to hear answers. And I'm really looking forward to these 3 debates, but I want to make sure that it's safe.
So your opponent has only been a congressman for a little bit since the spring. What has the reaction been like to his tenure so far in Congress? Is he representing the people of the Wisconsin 7th?
Well, Kelly, it's really nice to be able to have this little snapshot of how somebody represents us in Congress, because my opponent has been bad vote after bad vote in his short time in Congress. His very first act in Congress was in June, when he introduced legislation to withhold federal funding from our schools if they don't physically reopen by September 8th. I was horrified by this, because no matter where you stand on pandemic measures, our children and our teachers should not be held hostage. And as school board president of one of the largest school districts in Wisconsin, I know firsthand we need more federal investment in public education, not someone who threatens to take it away if he doesn't get his way. Currently, we get about 10% of our funding from the federal government, and that goes to services for children with disabilities and for children from low-income households, like free and reduced lunch. So my opponent, in his very first act in Congress, targeted some of our most vulnerable children. Now, believe me, that keeps me motivated each and every day. But he has just been bad vote after bad vote. I mean, the Great American Outdoors Act, this had huge bipartisan support. Even President Trump himself supported it. My opponent is so extreme, he voted against that. And Wisconsin's 7th Congressional District has some of the most beautiful lands, the Northwoods, places for recreation, for our hunters, our anglers to be able to enjoy. It doesn't make any sense that anybody representing this district would vote against the Great American Outdoors Act, but my opponent did. He also voted against the Moving Forward Act, which would modernize infrastructure, expand rural broadband access, bring good jobs here. So again, not representing the people here. He voted against the Delivering for America Act, to that emergency session that was convened to fund the post office. Now, Wisconsin 7 is an extremely rural district, and we have populations, whether it's our elderly, our veterans, our disabled individuals, or just rural populations that have to rely on the mail for medication, supplies, government checks, what have you. And the fact that he didn't support the Postal Service, again, not representing the district. And I could go on and on about his votes because they're bad vote after bad vote. But the one that I'll point out is a bit horrifying from last Friday, when he was one of 17 Republicans who voted no on the resolution to condemn QAnon. I mean, and then when he was pressed on in an interview, he still wouldn't. he's so extreme that he doesn't even join his party leaders in voting, on this resolution. So no, he doesn't represent Wisconsin 7th Congressional District.
I imagine this is a district that gets sort of overlooked a lot. Is there any polling, any way to know sort of what things look like going into the election?
Yeah, you're right about that. For whatever reason, I think sometimes people say, oh, it's so gerrymandered. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so big. It's just a lot of Republicans there is just no chance. But I should point out it was represented by a Democrat, Congressman Dave Obey, for 42 years. He has endorsed me in this race. And I think a lot of people here in Wisconsin 7th Congressional District vote by the candidate. They don't necessarily vote along party lines. And so the Republican that held the seat for about a decade after Congressman Dave Obey was a likable guy. He didn't vote the right way for the district, but when people would talk to him, they'd like him. That's not the same with my opponent. So we've had some polling done, and it looks very promising. There's a lot of independents to capture in this district, 31%, and a good amount of Republicans that aren't convinced my opponent's done a job that he should be reelected to, because he hasn't. As I mentioned, he's been bad vote after bad vote in his very short time in Congress. So while it might be a challenging district, and this is a grassroots campaign, I don't have the same funds that my opponent does, although I'm very proud of what we've raised. We've done better than any Democrat that's ever run for this seat in the last decade. But I think anything is possible. I've been giving this so much. I've been running for this seat since last October. And quite frankly, I thought I was giving it everything I have. And then Justice Ginsburg passed away, and I called Ben Wickler that night, chair of the state party here in Wisconsin. And I said, Ben, what more can I do to ensure a Biden victory? It's not even, just about this race, but what can I do to make sure that we turn Wisconsin blue? Because we know how critical it is. As goes Wisconsin, so goes the country. And he just said, keep doing what you're doing, running a strong congressional campaign that's going to help up the ticket, down the ticket. And so that's what I've been doing. But the stakes were raised even higher. You think they couldn't be any higher. And then, we have such an immense loss and see what's at stake with this potential composition of the Supreme Court, and how many people could lose their rights and generations of work undone with, a single vote. No, I said, I'm giving this everything I have, and I will not stop until the polls close on November 3rd.
So the polls don't close until November 3rd, but they're already open in Wisconsin, or at least for mail-in voting. So Wisconsin is one of these states that keeps throwing up barriers for people to vote and throwing up barriers for people to vote. But people seem pretty jazzed up about voting this time around, despite the pandemic, despite the difficulties. And as you mentioned, it's such an important state for the presidential election. What is going on with voting right now? What are the ways that people can vote? And, if we know people in the Wisconsin 7th, how can we encourage them to be voting?
I think there's still time to request an absentee ballot. So a lot of people are voting by absentee already. And then early voting starts, I believe, October 20th. So people would be able to go into their local municipal clerk, and they could vote that way if they want to vote in person. But yeah, I just did an event where I voted with my absentee ballot and dropped it off last week. And I had a little press coverage. And while we were waiting to get started, I was surprised by the number of people that went to that ballot box and dropped off their ballots just in a few minutes. So people are absolutely voting. And that's what I've been urging people to do as well. I think, there is so much at stake. I don't think it's cliche to say this is the most consequential election of our lifetime. No one can sit this one out. We all have to make our voice heard and exercise our fundamental right to vote. But I also believe it is a civic duty. I think about women and the fact that women didn't have the right to vote and what women went through to secure that right. And I think about, I'm Ho-Chunk, and I think about my direct relatives not having a right to vote. And this isn't something to take lightly. This is something that people fought and died for that right, and we should exercise that every single time we have the opportunity to.
So you just mentioned that you're Ho-Chunk. You would be only the third Native American woman in Congress. I see you're endorsed by both of the other two who are in Congress. But the other thing that sets you apart in a lot of ways from a lot of other candidates is that you're a mom. You're a mom of a fairly young son, and you're a single mom. And that is not something that is very well represented in Congress. What has that meant as you've been campaigning? But also, what would that mean to be in office and be representing that viewpoint?
Well, I think we need to achieve a government that's reflective of society, and we don't have that right now. Right now, Katie Porter out of California is the only single parent with young children. I'm a solo mom. I do the job all on my own, and I think I do bring a different perspective. I know that's been the case just being on the school board locally here and being, a non-traditional family, if you will. But I think people need to see themselves reflected in leadership, and they need to think, I've got somebody there that understands. And it's kind of the same too, is that Wisconsin 7's never been represented by a woman before. I mean, it's 2020, and it would be historic to win on November 3rd. And I don't ask anybody to vote for me because I'm Indigenous or a woman or a solo parent. I ask people to vote for me because I am a qualified woman who's going to work hard for the people of Wisconsin, whether they vote for me or not. But women's issues are human issues, and it is high time that our women and our girls see themselves reflected in congressional leadership, and our boys need to see it too.
So speaking of women and girls seeing themselves represented, you've been endorsed by Kamala Harris, who, of course, is running to be our first woman VP. Super excited about that. And she'll be in a big debate tomorrow. Are you going to be watching the debate? What are you going to be watching for?
I am so excited for that debate. I have to say, when the debates were announced, okay, we kind of knew how the presidential debates were going to be. Last Tuesday's performance by President Trump was not surprising at all. But I have been looking forward to this debate with Kamala Harris, and she is our next vice president, and she's going to make history on the debate stage. She is fierce. She is brilliant. I just have so much admiration for her. She's tough. I mean, women get so much slung at us. When we try to run for seats, we try to do things that there aren't enough of us doing. And it's almost like, some people don't want to see that level of motivation or ambition from a woman or a woman of color. And so I just adore Kamala Harris, and I am so honored to have her endorsement.
Yeah, that is super exciting. So what can people do in the next 28 days to help your election, help you get over the finish line?
Well, you certainly don't have to live in this district or state to care about this race or support it. As I mentioned, our strong congressional campaign is certainly going to help with a Biden win here in Wisconsin, and that win is going to be critical to ensuring a Biden win nationally. My website is triciaforwisconsin.com. You can go there and learn more about me, my stance on the issues. Certainly, if you want to contribute, that would be awesome. This is a grassroots campaign, and even though we didn't have nearly the money my opponent did in the special election, we still moved the needle over 6 points, and we can take it all the way this time. I'm also on Facebook. You can just type in Tricia Zunker and find my campaign page. I'm on Twitter. That's at Tricia4WI. My first name is spelled Tricia. I'm also on Instagram, same thing, Tricia4WI. And then there's different things to be able to sign up to volunteer. My page shares things. Also, the state party, Wisconsin Dems. It's wisdems.org. They have weekends of action, and people can phone bank or text bank from all over the country. I jump on these all the time. I've got 2 tomorrow night, actually, before the debate, where I'm jumping on and talking to people and thanking them for the calls and the texts. But they're doing these all the time. Just had somebody from California on one a couple days ago because he recognized, he couldn't sit on the sidelines for this one and wanted to get out and help and saw how critical Wisconsin was. So that's another way too. There's different ways, just helping get the word out, share on social media, volunteer contributions. I see campaigns like this one, grassroots campaigns, as 1,000-piece puzzles. Maybe some people don't have the contribution, but they've got the time to do the text banking. But all of that can come together, and we can out-organize, and that's how we can win.
Wonderful. And we will put links up to that on our website. I, of course, have very political children, and I get some pushback sometimes on social media, people saying, keep kids out of politics. You shouldn't have kids involved in politics. What does your son think about you running for Congress? I, of course, think it's wonderful to have kids involved in politics.
Yeah, I think it's all he's known is mommy runs for things. Because I currently serve in 2 elected seats. I'm associate justice in my 2nd elected term for my tribe. I started running for that the first time when he was 2. And, he's been with me knocking on doors back when it was safe to do that and dropping flyers off in tribal communities. And so he saw that. And then when I ran for school board here, citywide school board race, and I unseated an incumbent and knocked on 3,500 doors here in central Wisconsin. And he was with me for the bulk of them, quite frankly. And that was just a few years ago. And so when this opportunity came up, I talked to him first and foremost to get his support. And he was supportive. I mean, he understands that kids need adults that are going to advocate for them, that he shouldn't have classmates that go hungry, which is one of the reasons I got involved with school board, quite frankly, is I was first a mom just advocating that we need to do more because of the skyrocketing poverty here in central Wisconsin. And then I thought, well, I could be somebody that just does public comment, or I can have a seat at the table and actually be a decision maker. And that's how I started running. I find it so funny when people call me a politician because it's like, I'm just a mom that saw a place to get involved. And, I keep seeing these things and keep trying to do it. I don't consider myself a politician at all. But yeah, he's very supportive and I'm very blessed to have him. He's been an amazing kid through this whole thing. And it's been a lot of sacrifice because not only is, his mom running for Congress since last October, but then with the pandemic, we're just home. This campaign's been virtual since the pandemic hit. We can't do any of the fun stuff because we've just been safe social distancing. As you mentioned, we're now having another surge in cases here in Wisconsin. And he's just been a real trooper through it all. But when it's safe again, I'm going to take him on the best trip and just celebrate and relax and just thank him for being the awesome kid that he is in some awesome way that I don't know yet what it's going to be, but it's going to be something cool.
Yeah, I don't think I could have gotten through all this quarantine without my kids. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we talk about?
I think people are just so tired of the state of affairs. I make so many calls every single day, and it just seems like doom and gloom. And I think people are tired of the division, and they're tired of the gridlock, and I am too. I just want to get to work. It means something to me to be able to go back to people and say, I said I was going to do this, and I'm delivering on what I said. And I'm going to work hard for everybody here in Wisconsin 7th Congressional District, whether they vote for me or not. And I'm really honored and privileged to have had this opportunity because it has been historic just in its run, quite frankly. And I think about the hard work of my relatives, not just on my Ho-Chunk side. I mean, yeah, they sold baskets. My grandma sold baskets on the side of the road to make ends meet. And so now I collect them. They remind me of my family's persistence and resilience. But on my mom's side too, I come from generations of dairy farmers, and my grandpa had to quit school in 6th grade to help with the family farm, and then got his GED in his late 50s. And I think about all their hard work and sacrifice, and it wasn't for me to just 2 generations later stand on the sidelines and say, oh, I'm just going to care about me and my child. And that's really what prompted me to run. Is I know I have a voice. I've made an impact in my communities, and I know I'm in it for the right reasons. And so I'm trying my hardest. It is challenging, but I am looking forward to this opportunity. And whatever happens, it has been a privilege and an honor to earn the support of so many people here.
Well, Tricia, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It was fun to have you on again, and I will be watching very closely on November 3rd. I'm excited to get to call you Congresswoman soon.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's been so great speaking with you again.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at twobroadstalk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.